Many roller coasters in the world have been shut down for good, whether it's the end of its service life, a serious accident has happened, or the whole park shuts down for good. But it's also different when a fan favorite roller coaster is shut down for good without warning, without the chance to ride for the last time, no last rides, no closing ceremony, and no park announcement. Just shut down for good, waiting to be demolished. That's today's story of Volcano the Blast Coaster at Kings Dominion. Volcano was a revolutionary roller coaster for its time, maybe too ahead of its time. And in today's video, I'm going to cover how Volcano came to be, what made the experience so good, and why was it so beloved, and why this coaster was shut down forever without warning, and what the future holds for its former plot of land. Before we get started, I want to say welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome for the first time if it's your first time watching. I'm Austin from Park Hoppers Productions, and I talk about theme parks way too much, so that's why I made this channel. So if you want to join me in the comments below and tell me your favorite memory if you got to ride Volcano back in the day, and if you didn't, let me know what park or ride I should cover in my next video that you've rode. So without further ado, let's dive into the rise and fall of Volcano the Blast Coaster. Our story starts in 1966 in a small town of Cincinnati, Ohio. The Taft Broadcasting just purchased Hanna-Barbera, making the owners of the famous cartoons such as Scooby-Doo, the Jetsons, the Flintstones, and much more. For that time period, they owned the Saturday morning cartoon log. 3 years later, they purchased Cincinnati's Coney Island. This park suffered many floods as it was located right along the Ohio River. So Taft wanted to move the rides what they could to a new plot of land that they bought in Mason, just north of Coney Island. When designing this new park, they took heavy inspiration from the newly created theme park in Magic Kingdom down in Florida. If you can tell by the layout of the park just looking at it. For example, the park icon when you first walk in is the 1/3 scale Eiffel Tower. Very similar to the Cinderella Castle, and it's led by the entryway of International Street, just like Main Street USA, and much more. Kings Island was a massive success, so they created another park, its sister park in the beautiful state of Virginia. They chose a 400-acre plot of land near Richmond, and they started to build what would be, and still is, Kings Dominion. Being its sister park, the park shared a lot of similarities such as the icon of the park, the Eiffel Tower, themed lands, and a dueling racing coaster, which was Racer. The biggest difference was Kings Dominion opened with a Lion Country safari, like a classic safari. Guests could drive their cars through the entire area filled with lions, giraffes, elephants, and many more animals. Fun fact, this attraction actually opened up 1 year before Kings Dominion did, but when the park opened up in 1975, the drive-thru experience was changed to a ride and guests would ride in a monorail on a 20-minute tour through the animal exhibits. This park was seeing a great return on the investment like its sister park Kings Island, and in 1979, the park wanted to expand. In the year Kings Dominion opened up the Lost World. The center of Lost World was a 170-foot tall mountain that housed a few attractions inside. You're probably asking, okay, what was in this mountain that was so special, and what was that made it a fan favorite? There were 3 attractions. First was the Time Shaft. Like a classic Chance rotor, this is your normal fair ride where it spins you and you're pinned to the wall from the gravity. But this was themed to the steampunk style, so during the ride the guests would hear music and see many different lighting effects. And then the guests would have to walk through an impressive but very small cavern to actually get to this attraction. Next was Journey to Atlantis. No, wrong one. Okay, also wrong one. Okay, this is the right one. This was an era log flume, and this was lightly themed and scattered with skeletons among it and other themed elements. And as you can see, the ride ended in a drop outside of the mountain like many log rides do today. And the nightmare fuel induced ride was the oddest dark ride of the bunch, was the final one called the Land of Dews, where you would take a 7-minute trip to the center of the earth where you met the creatures who were apparently running our world, like making the plants grow by pushing them up through the earth, and much more. The one by far that was the weirdest was making the gears move to turn our earth, and like I said, much more. Try doing this ride after hitting a blinker. These 3 attractions and the rest of the mountain cost $20 million back when it opened up in 1979, and in today's overinflated world, this would have cost $90.5 million. The initial investment in the park didn't last long, as 2 of the rides were already planned to be rethemed, but these rethemes were what the park and the locals knew them for. The first change was Journey to Atlantis. No, not that one. Okay, my bad. Okay, this was the one that was rethemed to the Haunted River. This ride was the Northeast version of Pirates of the Caribbean, which was loved by the locals. Throughout your journey, you would encounter a shipwreck, a piranha river, and much, much more. And this would quickly become a fan favorite. And just a few short years later, the Haunted River got a friendly guest, and the retheme of the Land of Dews became themed to the Smurfs. And this brought the entire mountain becoming Smurf Mountain. But as we're going to learn, this attraction that pleased the kids and families alike didn't stand long in the park. As the age of the studios rolled in the 90s, many regional parks were forced to adapt and change with the times. And in 1992, Taft/King's Entertainment Corporation sold every park that they owned to Paramount Communications. And the next operating year, they opened up as Paramount's King's Dominion and Paramount Kings Island. With some new attractions, they also saw the closure of two really good fan-favorite attractions. Well, let's see what they added and what they taken away. The new attraction was a motion simulator called Days of Thunder, a NASCAR video featuring Tom Cruise. In the same year, the park saw the closure of the Safari Ride and also Smurf Mountain Dark Ride. And this was a big deal because the locals loved this, and business was business, and it really didn't make sense for Paramount to operate a ride based on an IP that wasn't even theirs. Paramount wanted to bring Nickelodeon into the park, and like many other companies, when they didn't want to operate and run a zoological park when they took over this, they shut it down. Like Cedar Fair took over Geauga Lake and shut down the zoological park, and if you want to check out that video, I did a whole history and documentary video on Geauga Lake. Make sure you watch it after this. And just like that, its neighbors, in 1996, the entirety of Lost World was shut down and the mountain was closed off for good. Or not. In 1996, Kings Island and Kings Dominion premiered the same coaster at their parks that was groundbreaking for its time, the Outer Limits Flight of Fear.
The heart strains to pump blood to the brain. You can no longer think. Everything goes black. And that's just the first 4 seconds. The Outer Limits, Flight of Fear, only at Paramount Kings Dominion.
Flight of Fear was revolutionary for its time for its first use of the LIM, or linear induction motors, to launch the roller coaster trains at punchy speeds. As guests entered the building, they would find a huge UFO inside the hangar of the Bureau of Paranormal Affairs, and they would also board the coaster to, quote, experience what happens when the human body is pushed to the outer limits. You would launch on the LIMs down a straightaway into the roller coaster's layout, and it was revolutionary because at the time, trains that would have wanted to be launched were either a counterweight or drive tires that were launching these trains, causing a lot of maintenance issues. For LIMs, this would be a manufacturing issue because this was a lot of friction on the trains and the coasters alike, and a lot of maintenance had to be put into these rides. The LIMs would be revolutionary because they would use magnets to launch the coasters, so saving on money and maintenance. And the best part about this was it caused no friction. But as time would tell, this wouldn't be the only launch coaster in the park in the next few years. I want to say if you're liking this content so far, please consider leaving a like and a subscribe to show that you appreciate and you like the video and the content that I'm putting out. It really helps YouTube push this video to other people so other people can learn the history of these roller coasters. Before we get into the volcano, first let's talk about its humble beginnings and the plans that never came to fruition. Paramount originally wanted to make an attraction where you drop inside the mountain, where you follow the lava chasers, a group of volcano experts that run the adventure of their lives exploring this volcano. The queue line was planned to be themed around the base camp, and you would walk up the backside of the mountain, then you would get on the coaster trains to begin your journey. But this coaster was ambitious, because little did they know the park would still use the same idea for the mountain for a future roller coaster with LIMs, just like Outer Limits. Because in 1997, the park announced that Kings Island would be building Volcano the Blast Coaster using LIMs, like I said, like Flight of Fear, that would launch you out of the volcano. You may have heard this roller coaster face mechanical issues, but they started at the very beginning of this coaster's life, believe it or not. The first problem was when testing the roller coaster, it couldn't even clear the launch out of the volcano, its signature element, so they had to fix that. This was a big task because the inversion it was going up was 155 feet tall, which would be the world's highest inversion at the time, and the train would roll back into the launch position. This causing the coaster to open up after many months of it was planned to be open, and when it did open, it only operated at half capacity, so the train wasn't as heavy, so it actually could make the launch. A permanent solution was put in place the next off-season, being a second set of LIMs to help the train finish the launch without rolling back. When this coaster opened up, the land in the area around this coaster also changed. The Safari Village was renamed Congo, which was probably to line with Paramount's film Congo that came out a few years before, and years later this area would be taken over actually by Tomb Raider. This saw the addition of Tomb Raider Firefall, which was a highly themed suspended topspin that featured fire, water, mist effects, and some insane music that go on top of it. Okay, what was the ride's experience? If you haven't rode this before, you're like, okay, what was the ride? So let me tell you about what's so special about this roller coaster and its layout. As you board the trains, you would start with a short bend and then a small straightaway, and you would slowly roll along the track as gravity pushed you along, waiting for this coaster, and you would hear a small hum from the LIMs as they fired up, waiting for you to launch. Then you were flung 70 miles per hour through the mountain. The first element was a massive helix that guests couldn't see because it was on the backside of the mountain. During this element, you would be going 70 miles per hour, then you would hit a huge curve that led to the peak of the mountain. During this element, you would be going 70 miles per hour, then you would hit a huge curve that led to the peak of the mountain. And you would hit more LIMs, and your roller coaster train went vertical as you were about to enter through the signature moment of Volcano. You would launch vertical through the fog and flames out of the volcano at a staggering height of 155 miles per hour. You would continue through a bank turn and then a heartline roll along the mountain. Acting like lava flowing around the mountain, you were hitting these elements at speeds and movements just like lava would act. And you would hit another 3 elements in the mountain in 2 more bank turns and another hardline roll to finish this iconic coaster off. You would drop 80 feet back into the mountain. It was a short but iconic experience, but this coaster was heavily flawed like any prototype roller coaster at the time, especially one manufactured by Intamin, if you know anything about them. Like many Intamin creations at the time, it was very unreliable, and the mechanics, it was just a nightmare in its unreliability. Mixed that with low capacity, and it spelled trouble. The first issue started back in 2006 when the coaster failed to launch out of the volcano and rolled back. But usually this is okay, and the coaster is supposed to do this for safety issues. But the coaster would safely roll back and launch and repeat the launch, but on this occasion, the second launch failed, and this produced sparks and everything all around the riders, sending one person to the hospital. And also leaving these riders stuck inside the mountain for hours. Only one rider was hospitalized, and this coaster was closed for a few weeks for the investigation. To add to everything going on at the time, the parks were owned by Paramount. They were all sold to Cedar Fair, owners of Cedar Point, other parks at the time. Many rides lost their theming at the parks, like the Italian Job being rethemed to Backlot Stunt Coaster, and Tomb Raider being renamed to The Crypt. The Volcano was safe for now. And in 2018, just a few weeks into the operating season, the ride faced many technical difficulties, and the ride did not open at all for the rest of the season. King's Dominion fans speculated on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and more when this iconic coaster would reopen, but no new parts were ordered, Intamin wasn't called to come work on the ride, and the park would never reopen the coaster. Because on February 2019, King's Dominion, Maggie Seller, their announcer, announced the coaster would never reopen. Because, a quote, "It became nearly impossible to keep up the ride to our high standards of rideability and guest satisfaction." Just 1 year later, the entire coaster and the mountain were demolished. This coaster's closure is still a sore subject for many of its fans because it's only been closed for 6 years now. And this coaster truly was iconic and probably one of the best defunct roller coasters of all time, if not the best. Volcano was revolutionary for its time and when it was operating. It was beloved by all the fans of King's Dominion and everybody that got to visit it, and it will never be forgotten. The coaster's plot of land has still not been filled, and the most anticipated replacement hasn't been announced like it's been rumored for years now, but recent leaks may show a new coaster coming to its old plot of land. As of January 2024, the park actually submitted an application to the county for its construction for a new roller coaster potentially for the 50th anniversary of 2025 coming up. The leaked schematics found that KingsDominionFans.com show a potential B&M wing coaster that would cover the old plot of land. So maybe in 2025 we will see this coaster finally be replaced, but only time will tell. If you made it this long, I want to say thank you so much for watching this entire video, and I hope you consider leaving a subscribe for more content and a like so more people would see this video. If you want to see more of my content like this, there will be some videos on the screen right now as watching, and YouTube likes when you watch more of my videos at one time. So make sure you watch another video of mine after this and keep going and watch more. I'm Austin from Park Hoppers Productions, and enjoy the rest of my content and ride on.